I love when I make time for reflection, and I try to do at least a monthly reflection, like half day, so that I can look at the month, see what I've maybe accomplished, see what were challenges, see where I want to change as I go into the next month. I do this both personally and professionally. And when I spend time in reflection, I can see not only, again, I can not only review and just kind of be on point and on the pulse of my life and where I want to go to, but I can also see God in it. Hey, everybody, welcome to Moxie Uncut. We are talking about joy and wonder this whole month, which gets me really excited because I think a lot of times we feel like we have to go chase joy or we have to go chase wonder, that it's something that, like when I think of wonder itself, like the idea of wandering, WANDER, like I think of wanderlust, I think of travel. And when we think of wonder, WONDER, there's this like wonderment, there's this creativity, there's this ideation. And a lot of times we think we have to go out of our norm to get there. But the reality is that wondering and being able to pull into our creative mind and be able to, I don't know, just I'm an ideator by nature, so just get ideas and all of that together doesn't have to happen in the new. It can happen in the mundane. And so this whole episode today, we're going to be talking about basking in the mundane. I love the word mundane. I love the idea of mundane. I actually used to kind of despise it because I'm like, oh, mundane, that's boring, right? That's the regular, that's the routine. But there's something beautiful and beautifully unexpected that we can find when we are looking at the mundane. And so we're going to be talking about the slow and the simple and the everyday moments that oftentimes we tend to overlook, right? We rush through them, we wish them away. But I believe today, I'm just going to, wherever you are, whether that's in your car, whether you're sitting, washing dishes, whatever that might be, I'm going to give you this invitation to just stop striving. And I've been using that word a lot this year, but just stop striving for the big and the loud and that Instagram worthy experience, right? And instead, let's bask in what's already right in front of you. I love talking about Instagram. I love talking about social. And I love those posts that are like reality versus what I posted, because there is this beauty of the reality that we don't post. We wait until it's perfect. We wait until it's big enough to share, grand enough to have people be invited into. But the reality is so much more. The reality is that the reality is so much more beautiful, right? It's these slow mornings that we might have with the kids, or this quiet cup of coffee that we just get to sit and have our mind meander, or it just might be something that is repetitive every day, and that we can just sit and remember to be grateful for that, right? And have presence. Last month, we talked about this idea of rest and presence. And today, actually, fun enough, this week I've been on a little bit of a safari with my mom. Now, my mom hasn't been to Kenya in 9 years. She came when my son was born, and then got to come back this year. There's been a lot of life stuff that's happened. But what I found is just the beauty of being out in safari with her. And so for me, this is something that I get to experience quite a bit, right? I get to see elephants and giraffes and lions, and I don't take that for granted. But also, I think, man, like, I don't know, we were just out the other day and I was like, this is so cool. This is so cool. And I think there's just this, when we can like take the breath and be present with what not only is right in front of us, but who is around us, that's like really, really beautiful. There's this sacred beauty in life that isn't rushed, and it's not flashy, but it's rooted in being fully present. I have a friend who recently like moved to a flip phone. She barely answers my text. And she's not really on social anymore. But what I do know of this friend is that when she is with you, she is with you, and she's planted right where her feet are, and she has a growing family, and she's a mama to 3, and has beautiful marriage. And when I am in her home, I am in her home, and she's not distracted from that. And there's this beauty of that intentional presence. Now, this is not, most of us can't do that. Most of us can't just, I say she's become a little bit of a hippie. Most of us can't just throw away our phone and act in that manner because we have a job, we have responsibilities, we have things going on. But there is a beauty to that I really enjoyed seeing her journey in. And I want us to start off with this idea and this understanding that the mundane is where meaning is made. It's a lot of alliteration there. I love alliteration, but the mundane is where meaning is made. And what I mean by that is the magic of life often happens here, right? It often happens in places we consider just completely routine. Maybe that's our school drop off. Again, that's doing dishes. Maybe that's daily check-ins. That's making breakfast. Like, there are just things that we do every day, from laundry to cleaning up, that seem very normal, seem routine. But joy isn't always found in these milestone moments, these big moments, these grandeur moments, these quote unquote Instagram worthy moments. It's found in these rhythms. And rhythms is a word I started using probably now 3 or 4 years ago, because I didn't want to go into the new year saying, oh, I have a new year resolution, because resolutions find an end. They end. But rhythms continue, and rhythms make us better in some way, right? We add rhythms in our life because we maybe want to improve our physicality. So we add rhythms of working out, or we add rhythms in our life that improve our well-being, our overall well-being. So maybe that's meditation or quiet time. But all of that, when we're adding rhythms, when we slow down and bring our full selves into the ordinary of just what these rhythms are, we discover that the mundane is never meaningless. Like, there are things right in front of us that we're missing because it is mundane, because it is normal. The other day, my daughter was just setting up her shop. She loves setting up shop now. So she's always setting up shop and doing things. And it was just so cute just to see her dreaming, actually, as she was setting up shop, as she's selling me her plastic fruits and her different things. She is in that moment of play, telling me actually dreams of the future that she has. And so she talked about her vision of just wanting to be an owner of a shop and a nail salon, and this is how she's going to do it, and this is what she's learning at school. And it was in that regular routine moment of play with my daughter that I got to find joy in just who she is, that I got to find joy in being her mama and learn more about her. And I think, again, it's these simple moments. She does shop almost every day, and she tells me her shop is open, and she hands me her little plastic cart. And some days I don't want to get up and go into that shop. That's the reality of motherhood and parenthood, right? But it's in those moments that if we step into the mundane and the routines, like, there are going to be things we wouldn't have wanted to miss. And those mundane moments go by very fast. They're fast. And then just like that, they're gone. And our kids are grown up, and we're grown up, and our life is a blink, right? In this larger timeline. So whatever we do and however we step into that, like, let's really focus on it in all of our heart and all of our intention. Because when we step into routine and when we are fully present in that, we can finally see that even in the most routine task, that there's this sacredness there, that it can be sacred when done, and it can be sacred, and it can have presence and purpose if we have intentionality backed behind it. Because we also can step into things and be really scattered, and that's okay. We have many of those days. We can be really scattered, we can be really distracted. But what if we decided to be like, okay, in my day today, how can I find wonder in this repetition? Because wonder lives in the repetition. We often resist repetition. We resist rhythms of things, but repetition builds those rhythms, and then rhythms create space for us to have reflection, to have connection, to have grounding. Because a lot of the rhythms we set in our life, right, are surrounding us to make us better in some way, right? When we add rhythms of working out, or rhythms of quiet time, or rhythms of, oh, I'm going to go on this walk with a friend. They're adding this this nature of us to connect back to who we are, to reflect on who we are, to have a grounding in our life. And so when we have repetitiveness of these rhythms, we are creating space for that. And the more familiar something becomes over time, the more opportunity we have to see it differently, to see it deeply, right? So when we start something new, it's new. We're getting excited about it. It's something new in our life. We're checking off boxes. As an achiever, I'm like, yes, I did it, right? But then over time, right, it's something that's a part of who we are. And it's something that we do every day. And that routine becomes very rhythmic in our life and just becomes part of our day-to-day. And it becomes a place of grounding for us because it's just something, right? I get up, I work out, I have this little drink that I have after my workout. When I get home, I put on the coffee pot, I go shower. Like, these are all things that I'm doing just because I do day over day. But if we allow ourselves to look at the familiar, to see how it's becoming, and also see the opportunity to have a different perspective, that is when really cool things can happen. I was reading this quote the other day. It was about a photographer, I believe, and I wish I had it in front of me, but again, Moxie Uncut, we say it how it is. But it was about a photographer, and it was talking about how this photographer didn't have the right shot, but he didn't give up on the shot of the situation that he was, shooting. But what he did is change his lens and his perspective to get the shot that he wanted. And this beauty of this quote, then related to situations in our life, that there might be situations in our life that we might not like, but that we don't give up on those potential situations, that again, we look at it in a different angle and we look at it in a different perspective to change what's happening in our current status of our life. And I think in the mundane, we can do the same thing. In these rhythms that are happening in our life, if we look at it in a different lens and perspective, and we decide to be more intentional in the day in and day out instead of seeing it as meaningless, man, we're going to find a lot of joy and wonder, and we're going to find, again, an opportunity to see something differently and to find gratitude in that. So even when it does feel the same, God is always doing something new in our life. And I want us to remember that. Like, there are going to be times in our life when things feel very, very similar. They feel very much the same, and we're wondering, okay, God, where are you? And he might feel at a distance, but the reality is he's there, and he's working, and he's not giving up on you. He's not giving up on you. I love when I make time for reflection, and I try to do at least a monthly reflection, like half day, so that I can look at the month, see what I've maybe accomplished, see what were challenges, see where I want to change as I go into the next month. I do this both personally and professionally. And when I spend time in reflection, I can see not only, I can not only review and just kind of be on point and on the pulse of my life and where I want to go to, but I can also see God in it. I can look at the day-to-day and be like, man, you were there. And I might not have seen you in the month, or I might have, again, been distracted, but you were there. And so in a world, right, where we celebrate hustle, we celebrate these highlight reels, we can choose to be present in our everyday life. And we can kind of do this in a way that's countercultural, right, than what most people do. But it's an incredible feeling when we decide to slow down. Because when we decide to slow down, when we decide to reflect, when we decide to look differently at the mundane, we're going to see that presence over performance will always bring us a deep, deep joy. It will, because it's not about how impressive our life looks. It's not about, it's not about that. It's about how deeply we have lived our life with the people that are around us, how deeply we have found connection and community. And you can live your life differently, the same life differently, just by having a different perspective, because a lot of this is really grounded in gratitude, right? Joy is not always, the definition of joy is not happiness. These are not synonymous. Joy can be found even in chaos, even in storms. And joy doesn't demand us to have performance, right? Because again, you're not always finding joy from the high accolades and high milestones, but joy does require you to be present. So if we're seeking for joy and we're trying to define joy through the lens of happiness, then we need to change that, because that's not the true definition of joy in our life. It's not the true definition of joy. There's a verse in Psalm 16, and it says, "You make known to me the path of life, and you will fill me with joy in your presence." There are some of you listening, and your path of life has not been easy. You have a really hard testimony, and maybe it's really hard right now. But in that, God says he will fill you with joy. Joy lives where presence leads. It's there. It's sitting there waiting. It's just if we're going to be able to pick it up. If we're too distracted from comparison and what the world is telling us to do, then we might miss joy altogether. Because again, joy is in the chaos and the storms, just as it is in the highest milestones as well. But you can be joyful even when it's really sad moments, right? Those emotions can coexist with one another. So I want us to leave today really remembering that mundane is where meaning is made. Wonder lives in our repetition, and presence over performance will always bring us deep joy. I decided to give you guys those 3 points because, I could talk about the mundane all day, and how, again, I sought out adventure after adventure, after accolade after accolade. And when I really finally started to slow down, I always say that at the end of my 20s, but the reality is I still had young babies. And in that season, that was really hard. But in 2022, so in I would say early 30s, I'm giving my age, I'm moving into my late 30s. But my early 30s is when I really was like, okay, God, like, I'm here. You have me here. And what does this look like? What does this look like? What does this truly look like? I just started to ask more questions like, is this going to be my life forever? And I started to ask that because I was really burnt out and stressed out at that time. And I was really seeking this path of what does it look like to find a path of just steadiness, but steadiness in my spirit. Like, I'd been building a business for so long in these different, again, chasing after achievement, but I was like, but what about me? Like, can I maintain this long term? So I started to really ask the question around sustainability, and not just sustainability of business and what I talked about most of my days, but sustainability of self. And I knew that in order to have sustainability of self, I needed to find a little bit more joy in the moments, a little bit more joy in the routine, a little bit more presence in the mundane, and figure out how to slow down my life in other ways and know that God was there alongside with me and everything was okay. And my achiever side was still going to be filled up in some ways, but in a different perspective. I had to look at my life in a different angle. And when I started looking at a different angle, I realized what I was overlooking. And that was the joy and the wonder and the beauty that was happening right in front of me that I just was not seeing. And that was in my family, right? And that was in my kids, but that was also in my community. Like, I was missing things that were right in front of me, that people were right there, that I was just, a couple feet away from. Literally and figuratively, I was missing it. And so I needed to learn how to slow down. I needed to learn how to not overlook that mundane part of my life and not rush through it, because it truly was where I was being grounded. And if I didn't make space for that, if I didn't allow joy and wonder to meet me in that space, then I actually don't know where I'd be today. I don't think I would be speaking to you on Moxie, obviously not about this topic, but I think I still would be rushing through of trying to find the hustle and the next accolade, comparing myself with the person on the next Instagram feed and all of that. And I think at the end of the day, I found that what's right in front of us is the most sacred and the most special. What I want to say, I guess what I want to get out of this at the very end is that I still love setting goals. I still love pushing forward. That's just part of who I am. And so when I look at this, and when I'm telling you of like basking in the mundane, that's not saying, oh, well, don't have any ambition. I feel like there can be this weird tension between sitting present in the mundane and being an ambitious spirit. There's this tension that sits there, but you can still be ambitious and you can still find rhythms in your life that keep you present with today. And so I guess that's my challenge for you today is, how are you staying in the mundane and not overlooking what's right in front of you, but also being able to fill up the space in a way where you find joy and wonder, where you're not seeking it elsewhere, right? You find it right in front of you, but you still are making time for your goals. You're making time for the balance, because it is about balance, and our life is a pendulum. Seasons look different, and so to have grace on yourself and what that looks like. But I hope that as you move forward, some of this resonated with you, that you can look in your life and you can look at what's in front of you and you don't miss it. If anything, I do not want you to miss what's right in front of you. I do not want you to miss the little joys of what happens in your routine. And I do not want you to miss the whisper of God in those routine moments, because he shows up. But the question is whether or not you're listening. So are you listening today? And can you make time to just sit in the mundane and find true meaning of what's right in front of you? I love you, friends. I love this community. Let's keep finding joy and wonder this month. And as always, Moxie on.